I hear them coming near, their heart it beats with fear. They say my name in shame. My words they were abused, my healing they misused, and now I stand accused. They came to light the flame, they came to watch me hang and burn my gifts away. But once the smoke's removed, my body's been abused. My soul is watching you. My sisters, we have come, the old and ancient ones, return to bring anew. We won't go in your flame, no, none of us will hang. Our voices we reclaim. The burned witches come, gather everyone, and hear what we to say.
Welcome, you guys, to season 2 of Burnt Witches. This is a limited series podcast where history rises from the ashes and comes back to you in a modern way. Here, we're going to discuss all things magic, esoteric, spiritual, or the modern term woo. Looking to dispel myths, we will meet brave souls who are coming onto the show this season who are here to help, heal, and educate. But first, we always like to step back in time with some quick facts and a dedication. I originally thought that this was, or maybe I just hoped it was, a folklore or truly just a Monty Python skit, but they actually did dunking on people to determine innocence or guilt of witchcraft. This is the process where an accused person was bound and thrown into a body of water, and if they sank, they were declared not to be a witch and found innocent, but they sunk. And if they floated to the top, they were obviously a witch and found guilty. That brings us to today's show dedication. She's known as the Witch of Pungo. Her name is Grace Sherwood. She is the last person on record to be convicted of witchcraft in Virginia. Now, Grace was just a mother. She was a mother, she was a wife, she had 3 kids, she was a farmer, a healer, and a midwife. She also was a woman who was charged with witchcraft not once, not twice, but 3 times. Grace was first charged in 1697 when she was accused of casting a spell on a bull, which resulted in its death. That case was dismissed. In 1698, Grace was then accused of bewitching hogs and an entire cotton crop. That case was also dismissed, but this time Grace sued for slander. But that didn't go anywhere. She was unsuccessful, and her husband ended up having to pay all of those legal fees. In 1701, Grace then became a widow, leaving her to tend to her farm and children all alone. And 5 years later, Luke Hill formally accused her in 1706 for conjuring up storms, ruining crops, and killing livestock. But this time, that one stuck. and she was convicted. Now, authorities ordered Grace be ducked in water to determine innocence or guilt. She was bound and thrown into the Lynnhaven River. If she floated, she was a witch, and if she sank, she was innocent. Well, Grace untied herself, floated to the surface, and then spent 7 years in prison, accused of witchcraft, convicted of witchcraft. She went back home and lived on her farm peacefully until she died at the age of 80 in 1740. Today, there is a statue of Grace Sherwood in Virginia near Centera Bayside Hospital. This is near Virginia Beach. And her statue is close to the courthouse where she was tried. Grace is now sculpted alongside a raccoon carrying a basket of garlic and rosemary in recognition of her love of animals and herbal healing. This all happened because in 2006, Governor Tim Kaine went back and had her ruling completely overturned, and she was declared innocent. So it took 300 years, but it did happen. And that brings me to our guest today, Laura Van Tyne. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. You guys, Laura is a remote viewer, public speaker, and author. Laura has been involved in the spiritual war for decades now, becoming trained in special ops of entity and parasitic implant removals, energy clearings, and soul retrievals, utilizing quantum healing hypnosis techniques. Laura has also focused on the spiritual war and barriers that limit humans from accessing their true potential, soul sovereignty, and achieving optimal soul health. So thank you for being on the show today, Laura.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to be really rude and open this door so the dog stops whining.
You're totally fine.
Sorry. I forgot to do that part.
That's part of the animal war we deal with when we record podcasts.
Absolutely.
I have double doors shut so that mine don't do the same.
Oh my goodness. So yeah, I should have just, anyways, thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the introduction. It is a spiritual war, and it's just kind of time we all woke up, realized it so that we can take our power back. That's all it is. It's just about power.
Absolutely.
And on the earth plane, we see power struggles everywhere, within family units, within working environments, within governments, within countries, right? It's no different in those other realms that we may not be able to see, feel, those intangible realms. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I usually try to find a good dedication that ties into our theme, but in reality, guys, I kind of wanted the first show I was so astounded that this actually happened. This really did happen, this dunking. And it just amazes me that we are still in this spiritual war where when people are afraid or they don't have answers, the big thing is they don't have answers for what's happening in their life. Just like those 3 people that accused Grace, they didn't understand why their livestock was passing away or why their fields weren't prospering. And so who are they going to point to? Oh, let's point to the herbal healer woman, the mom who's on the farm, and let's just blame her, because the human consciousness needs something to blame. They need something. They need a reason. And Laura, you've done such a beautiful job of trying to explain and understand, and most importantly, educate. It is truly about education, which is why Grace is now, she was released 300 years later, innocent because of education. We became educated.
And it's interesting because I'm also wondering, while you were reading that, did Grace have a better piece of property that was more prosperous than said neighbors, right? Was she on some beneficial ley lines or something like that? We don't know, but I kind of wonder, right?
Well,
life flowed easy for that family at certain points, and was it a jealousy issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I have gotten to the heart of a number of these cases, which we'll be discussing more throughout this season. It does come down to wealth and greed and power, much like we're still seeing today.
And it's no different in those other realms. And I think, you know, back to the spiritual war, what does that mean? We're in a spiritual war, right? We hear the term, it's such an overused term right now, but we don't have a tangible meaning to it. So what if in these other realms, we're in this third dimensional realm of tangibility. We have time, space, and gravity to have the physical realities that we have to have these earth experiences. But what if there's these other realmed beings, and there are, who are looking at us as resources, right? We're a resource. We are beings of God, of light. So when you leave the light of God, you need an energy source. And that's where I started kind of figuring things out, because I used to be a school teacher. I taught math and I taught Spanish, right? That is so far down the rabbit hole for me. And what ended up happening is one of my kids became really, really psychic. And I'm like, whoa, I literally quit teaching to figure this out. And I've got a couple of new books out, Spiritual War and Understanding How the Unseen Energetic World Affects Us. Have you ever been in a meeting where the tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife? What is that? That is unseen energy that impacts us. We feel it, right?
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of examples like that when we talk about vibrational energies, etc. We have these phrases like, oh, birds of a feather flock together, right? It just means that, you know, they're vibing the same way. That's cool, right? Or if there's a delta in frequencies and I'm uncomfortable at a certain location, what is that? That's the unseen energetic world. Those are just a few examples of how the energies work. We haven't even begun to talk about the entities yet, but those are just some of those just small little examples of how energy impacts us every single day. And you know, there's people out there, and I'm one of them, and I'm not unique this way, where you're driving down the road, you're driving down the freeway, and you can feel that this car that's 3 cars in front of me over one lane, they're just angry, and I want to get past them before something bad happens. There's no sign on the car that says angry driver, but somehow you know, right? What is that?
Yes. And we have been conditioned to ignore that, to
Yes.
dismiss it as, oh, I'm just thinking too much in my head. Oh, I'm just crazy, or I'm too sensitive.
Who put those thoughts there, right? It wasn't the light side.
No.
And so a lot of what I work with people are these pre-programmed belief structures. For example, we'll just talk about angels for a minute. How many of us have been pre-programmed to believe that my problem is not worthy of an angel's help? How many of, right? How many of us have been pre-programmed to believe that I need to save all my little chits because I don't want to, like, you know, waste an ask on an angel, right? So what if who told us that?
Yeah.
It wasn't God, because angels were created to help humanity, because this is not an easy course of action for our soul here on earth. So what if we start asking angels more for help, more and more and more? How does that shift the planet's energy? So here's the deal. Angels also earn karma. Angels also can ascend in their ranks, but they have to be of service to us. So if these angels are just kind of standing around twiddling their thumbs, waiting for me to ask for them for help, we're not helping the angels. So start asking, and the angels can't violate our free will, but start asking for help. And what I mean by they can't violate our free will, I can't say, I'm asking that the angels make sure that I get this job that I'm interviewing for. They can't do that. But what you can do is you can ask the angels to go to the interview with you. You can ask the angels to help calm your nerves for you. You can ask the angels to help guide your words. You can ask the angels to clear the energy in the room for optimal success. Those are all within the confines of spiritual law.
Mhm.
So use your angels. If you've got kids, teenagers who are driving, oh, people, pack those cars with angels from the moment they are in the driveway to the moment they leave and come back. Fill the car
Laura,
with angels.
I want to interrupt you for a minute? This is one of my favorite stories that I've heard you share, and I would love for you to share it here. Can you please share the story of your daughter with the angels in the car for the accident?
Oh, yes. So my daughter had gotten her license late. She literally fell off of a chair pyramid, had a 9-month concussion, had to kind of relearn how to read and some things. It was pretty serious. And so she's surfing with her friends, and mom always has to come and take her because she doesn't have her license yet. And so she finally gets her license, and she gets a car all in the same week. And she's like, Mom, can we, I want to drive and I want to go surfing Saturday morning. And, we're about an exit or so off the freeway to the beach. So it's not that long of a drive for her. But the night and the whole week was planned. Oh, yep, you're going to drive yourself. You're going to have fun. The surfboard actually fit in the car, which was great. We didn't have time for a rack yet. And so that night before, my spidey senses just kind of go off on me. It's like, no, you can't drive yourself. You're going to get into an accident. You're going to get hit by a drunk driver. It's not going to be your fault. And you would have thought World War III broke out in our house. I mean, everybody was angry with mom. Mom, just be normal. Why can't you be normal, Mom? And I'm like, I know, but you're going to get, it's not going to be your fault. And then I thought, I can either have my family be angry with me for the rest of my life for something that didn't happen, or I can be creative, think out of the box, and come up with a different solution to keep her safe. And so what I did was that night I prayed and I asked for the angels to be in her car, inside, outside. But because she's a minor child, we still have jurisdiction over her, right? I can't do this to my 30-year-old. Not that I have a 30-year-old, but so I told the angels, I want them to place their hands over her hands on the steering wheel. I want all the bells and whistles. And so she leaves at about, I'm going to say 6 o'clock in the morning. Not 10 minutes later, we get a phone call from her. And her voice is shaking. She goes, Mom, I was hit and I'm okay, blah, blah, blah. And then my husband and I practically teleported to the scene. And we get there and the CHP guy, California Highway Patrol guy, is there. And he's looking at us and he says, based on the point of impact, I don't know how she didn't spin out or flip this car. And they never found the driver. She said she could see him coming up, barreling behind her, weaving in all the lanes. So he was probably drunk. And after everything settled down, I started asking her questions and she says, Mom, it was so weird. She said, I could see him hitting me. Everything slowed down and the car just floated off to the side of the road and just parallel parked very easily. Because remember, she's dealing with a concussion. It's like, oh my gosh, we can't go backwards, right? So she floated off to the side. She was unharmed. The car, which was a new car for us, we'd only owned it for 3 days, was now under suspicion of insurance fraud. It needed some repairs. It was okay. She was okay. But that's the power of the angels. And we have to practice asking them for help. We can't just go from 0 to 60. This is one of the best ways we can build our spiritual team. So in this spiritual war, we need to add our team members, our soul tribe, our spirit guides. But here's the catch. How do we know if they're imposters or they're really the good guys? We've also been programmed to believe, or pre-programmed to believe, that, oh, this is Archangel Michael, this is so-and-so, and I just trust and I start communicating with him or asking for help, etc. But how do I know it's really him? It's no different than a pedophile priest who everybody loves. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing, right? The same thing happens in other dimensions. The concept of as above, so below, that is true. So what we need to do is we need to learn spiritual discernment. The ability to discern whom is whom, what is what, do they have our greater good in mind or not? And when we do this, when I talk about this and people say, oh, I just know, that's great and all, but if you just know, chances are the dark side knows that you just know, and they're going to try to slip in an imposter every now and then. What do we do about it? So there's a few tools and techniques that I use, and these are very basic ones for right now. And I encourage everybody to, keep packing into their spiritual tool belt, new tools, new ideas, because everything evolves. The light side evolves, but so does the dark side. We don't think about the dark side evolving, but they watch us, they look for our patterns. And when they can see a pattern and they see a weakness, they can just punch through and they've create a crack in our foundation that they know they have access to. It just might be subtle at first, but they can make it stronger and grow and infiltrate us easier. So one of the things I always do when I work with a client, and we always work together because this is your soul, this is your health. I'm not going to tell you, oh, your dead grandma's standing there and she says she really likes the pancakes you make it for breakfast every morning. What good does that do, right? So what we do is I teach people how to see, how to visualize, how to sense, and it can be natural for some people, or it can be really hard for some people. We're all at the ability we are at, and it's not a contest. Spirituality is never a contest. It doesn't mean we can't improve and grow. And so what I'll do is I'm requesting, a team of angels, or I'm requesting my spiritual team. And I'm literally, once I see, sense, or feel their presence, I don't always see them in full aspect. It takes a lot more energy to do that. But I can feel them, I can sense them, even sometimes I can smell, like if something is like extremely fresh air, something else is going on, which is usually pretty good. And then what I'll do is I will visualize myself pouring salt on them. Salt cleanses in all dimensions. If you want something with a little bit more power, what was it, Christ child gifted? And I know you've heard me say this, right?
Frankincense,
Gold and myrrh, right? Okay, so why was it gifted tree sap, people? Right? They're high frequency substances. So you can visualize yourself pouring frankincense and myrrh. By the way, excellent, right?
my frankincense water that I spray. I sprayed the computer, I sprayed the area for this session today.
I do the same thing. I always prep before I do anything because I know I've got a target on my back. It's, whatever. And if I can be proactive, I'll be proactive. I mean, there's some days where I just like to, just chill out, be normal and not have to think, right? But that's not my purview for right now, at least. So anyways, you can visualize yourself pouring frankincense on them, myrrh on them, salt on them, a combination of everything. There's a lot of things we can do, and all you have to do is just sit. And if you have a hard time visualizing, we can visualize, okay, I've got some white angelica here, okay? All I'm going to do is I'm going to hold an object in my hand and I'm going to stare at it, feel it, sense it, feel the weight, feel the texture. I can put it down and I'm going to imagine that same object in my mind's eye. This is one way we can learn how to visualize. And it takes practice. Doctors have practices, lawyers have practices. Well, we can have our own spiritual practices too. And our souls are worth it. So you can also pour any high frequency substance on them. If you feel an energetic shift where this being, let's use angels. The angel, somehow you feel like there's a shift in energy, but you can't quite describe it. Chances are you got an imposter. Yeah. If you see it disappear, it could have been a hologram. It could have been also an imposter. And if that happens to you, don't think that you weren't worthy for a true angel's help. Say, I dodged a bullet. Let's do it again. And that type of perseverance is soul healing. The larger we can grow our spiritual team with intention and discernment, not just like, I'm going to do my spiritual team. Intention and discernment are key. I want the best team possible. I don't know about you, but I want to be picked first on every team I'm on, right? Yeah. Is it an ego thing? Yeah, probably, whatever. But at the same time, sometimes a healthy ego is a good thing. Yeah. A healthy ego can keep us safe. It can give us the confidence we need to make these crucial decisions. But if my ego becomes over the top and harmful, that's a different story. It's almost a form of spiritual narcissism.
Yeah.
And that too is dangerous. So if you ever come across any guru kind of person, and I don't want to diss the shamanic world, but there's a lot of, get your shaman certificate online kind of thing. Do your homework with any spiritual practitioner, ask them their belief structure, ask them any question you want. If your spiritual practitioner is in poor health, you don't need that person as your spiritual practitioner. There's been times where I will have to stop what I'm doing and tell my clients, and it doesn't happen that often anymore, knock on wood, I am not in a position to help you today because I've been contaminated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a fair assessment. I would not want to work on somebody if I was contaminated. You wouldn't want to have open heart surgery if your doctor had COVID, right?
Right.
Similar concept.
Yes. Yeah. Well, remember, Laura, you and I were in Sedona together, and I was supposed to do healing sessions, and it was the middle of winter, and I had a case of, I was healing from the flu, but I still wasn't completely connected. Like I felt like my head was detached from my body.
Yeah.
There was no way I was going to do healing sessions because my body was not in alignment in order to properly flow the energy the way it needed to. And so I needed to stop and not do the work.
That's a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And people may be disappointed, but I'd rather be disappointed than harmed.
Yeah. Correct.
And it takes a person of courage and stamina and integrity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier just to go ahead and do healing sessions and move on. But we really have to be judicious with our spiritual practices because you were in a weakened state and you recognize that. And we all get hit. So when we're in a weakened state, you know darn well that dark side, hey, there's an opportunity. Hey, that looks like a tasty lunch down there, right?
Yeah. And you said earlier, and I want to interject an even simpler term. We are food. We're
Yeah.
food. Our energy field is food. And the one thing that I love that you always speak on, Laura, because I've always been told the same, shown the same. This is not a super complicated process. It is simple. You can use simple practices that can have astounding outcomes from them. I had a new client come in, and they were already in Bali, and they were getting ready to go. They were going to go and do a 10-day journey on their own and do deep meditations in the forest, in this very old forest. And they were going to take some herbals with them, but they were very, very, very green in terms of understanding the energy world. And I projected myself into that forest, and I saw a shapeshifter walking around, very old, has been in this forest for thousands and thousands of years. And it showed me that it was going to project itself as as a guide for my client. And so, because I have heard you say so many times, I encourage my client, when you are approached by anything while you're in this meditative herbal stance, ask for them to pour salt on them. And I said, anyone that is of your team and for your highest good will have no problem doing that. They'll say, of course I can, whatever's to make you happy, make you feel comfortable. The ones who are not and are superimposing something that is loving and of goodness will reject it, and they'll push back on you. And that's when you know that you have now encountered this being in this force.
Yeah.
But yes, they're waiting for these opportunities. And we are in a place where so many people are beginning to, I'm going to say, turn on, per se. That's not really what's happening, but they're just coming home to themselves. And so that's why it's important to have these simple practices, because when you do that, your light becomes even much more scrumptious and yummy.
Absolutely.
And
it's also important, I think, to keep these spiritual practices simple. And I've seen so many people where, I don't know, you have to go to the beach, pour molasses on yourself on a full moon, on the third night of a full moon, and I don't know, dance around. Really? So let's keep them simple and always You can actually keep a notepad of spiritual practices and tools that you can use. You may want to do something consistently daily. For example, I'm going to visualize pouring salt through my home, through the walls, through the floors, everything to clean and clear the energies. Here's another fun one I really like to use, especially because during family reunion season in those summer times, right? Because family reunions are always so much fun. And everybody's got this Uncle Sal or Aunt Sally or whatever that really likes to stir the pot, right? And get everybody going. So what you can do, because you're going to be in that space with them, you have the spiritual jurisdiction to bring in your angels. You can pour salt in the whole room, whatever it is. You can also bring in, and this is also good for those contentious meetings that we may have at work. Visualize pink rose petals floating and wafting down from the sky. So the energy of pink is very soft. The rose petal can cut it like a knife. So you're cutting the energy in a soft manner. It's a very subtle technique, but it works. Now, I can't go do this in my boss's office without my boss's permission, but I can do it in the community rooms. Maybe there's a conference room, or maybe there's somewhere else where I can just have these rose petals visualizing them coming down. You can also, as you gain in spiritual practices and techniques and strength and stamina, because what we're doing is building our spiritual muscle, right? We talk about our health all the time, but we don't talk about our spiritual health. So build that spiritual muscle. You can put it on those pink rose petals on a dew loop, so they just keep perpetually falling down, and it shifts the energy. It's a very nice practice that is gentle, it's subtle, but it eventually it catches up, and it's like, whoa, this feels good in here now.
Yeah.
There's a lot we can do.
So another practice that I do as well, Laura, when we're talking about going into any type of a business, even just with work and business practices, I will put my angelics and or my guides with the intention. So each person has their own filters and their own distortions, and they're hearing through their own filter. And so I have put the intention, sometimes in really important meetings, that for my angelics, help them hear me clearly, help my words to be heard in their heart and not in their monkey mind. And so those are the type of intentions that I will work with my spiritual team to help me, just even through business in everyday life, that I will use. And that is just putting this encoding of energy that they can help. I have also, if there's something that, we talk about manifestation, a lot of people talk about manifestation, and I will use my angelics of something that I'm really wanting to call forth and bring into my life. I will say, place my name on their heart. And if it's in alignment, then they'll reach out. And so that's one way that I'll manifest, is just having them just place my name. And I always say on their heart, because the heart is a high frequency.
Absolutely. That's wonderful. I do something very similar, actually call it the same thing. And it works because the intention has to be pure.
Mm-hmm.
If you are in an angry moment or something's happening and you set that intention, it's false. It won't work.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to step back. And again, we're in these human bodies and we're riddled with emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of this is, how do we learn to control the emotion for our benefit? This is a part of the spiritual war too, right?
Yes.
Because the dark side loves emotional turmoil. They feed off of this energy. And look around us, how many families have been destroyed? How many friendships are gone now? Politically, there's such a huge chasm and divide. There's no middle ground anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's really benefiting from that? It's not humanity.
No. So my background before I started practicing was I worked in the news. I worked in the newsroom. I was a producer, I was a writer, and all through journalism school, we were taught the mantra, if it bleeds, it leads. Mm-hmm. And that was drilled into us. I went to the Scripps School of Journalism, and that is what it was. And looking at that now, I only lasted 2 years. It was just the death of me. I had to get out of that industry. But look at that. Why? Why? And I remember being in the college classroom with my classmates, and the vast majority of us aspired to be part of the change because we wanted to hear positive news. We wanted to hear good things. Why is it always about death and loss and destruction and war and everything that's bad about humanity? But when you look at that, even just the phrasing of if it bleeds, like they're wanting blood in the news. And all of it is to keep us into this state of anger and frustration. And what did they really up the ante? They started showing us global news 24 hours a day, of which we can't do anything about that. Joe Schmo sitting in their house in Missouri can't do anything about what is going on in Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Gaza, anywhere. But they're gonna feel all of the emotions. That is for a reason.
Absolutely. And that's such an eloquent point. So the dark side, when they left the light of God, they left their energy source.
Yep.
So now where do they get their energy source from? They need food, and they're looking at humanity, and they cast this net over the fourth dimension. And we live in the third dimension. The fourth dimension is it's almost like a step up transformer for us to go back home to the higher realms. But they cast this net over it, and they're trying to grab as much of humanity as possible. And the dark side, can reincarnate us as much as the light side does. We don't think about that. We always think every baby is heaven sent, right? Well, you look into somebody's eyes where they're vacant and there's nothing going on. What's happening with that soul?
Yeah.
And this is where building a healthy soul leads to spiritual sovereignty, soul sovereignty, reclaiming our free will, because we were gifted free will by God, source energy, creator, whatever your word is for it. And it's being mitigated almost at every turn.
Mm-hmm. I will also, in my practice, Laura, when we go into the Akashics and I start to see a cycle that has, okay, lifetime, 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 the same issue, working through the wording and declaring the free will sovereignty again of that soul, that they are not. I have seen etheric chains around so many people's ankles.
Yeah.
And now we can't remove those. It has to be the soul's choice.
Right.
We can just, it's like I can lead a horse to water, but I can't make him drink, right? So we can't remove it. Only the soul does. But by coming in and declaring that sovereignty of, I will not continue to be chained in this looping cycle of my soul coming and continuing this program. So that is a big part of this spiritual war as well.
Absolutely. And it's also, you bring up a really good point about this, and adding on a little bit, people who have ailments or conditions tend to own them. I have cancer, right? I have fibromyalgia. Well, what if you don't have it? What if you're working through a condition to get to the other side? How does that change the outcome? Because if I have cancer, I'm owning cancer. It owns me, right? We become symbiotic. So let's change the wording, much like what you're talking about in the Akashic records. That's a big deal. And I've seen those same etheric chains. Usually for me, I see them on the ankles, sometimes on the wrist, but mostly on the ankles.
Yeah.
They have to break them off. And there's ways to do that. Again, you can use the visualization technique of salt. So let's say you're working with a practitioner and you both see and sense that you've got these chains and these karmic patterns that you have to break, right? Because karma offers us the same lesson over and over and over. It's just got a different colored candy wrapper on it.
Yeah.
And we take off the candy wrapper and then we get another one. And so if you have a parent who was overbearing and never allowing you to think or breathe, etc., and you grow up and now you have a boss that's the same way, or maybe a spouse that's the same way, what's the lesson that you need to learn? How do you break free of that? And those are those etheric chains. And so you can work on it, visualizing the etheric chain being melted off of you, hand it off to an angel. Don't litter the ether. What I'll what I'll do is hand off any devices or implants to a higher level being, or literally just have them be put in a hazmat bag and handed off, much like we would do here on Earth. So there's a lot we can do with it. And just because you have a life pattern that's really hard to break doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah. And I want to add in, and I'm sorry, did I say wrists? I meant ankles. I always see them on the ankles of people, not the wrist. But, and I want to add in that there's also this well, not understanding, but we've been told that when you find out, oh, I'm working through karma, that they're just like, oh, I'm working through karma. I'm working through my karma. I'm working through my karma. And then so therefore, just like the wording, you're calling in more work. You're calling in more.
It doesn't have to be negative.
Yeah. And I always say, like, the minute that you realize that this is a karmic cycle, then you have the immediate authority to break it.
Yep. Bingo. Yep.
When it comes to awareness, break it. You don't have to be this slave to karma.
No, and karma is not negative. I mean, there's a lot of amazing karmic events that happen, right? But we tend to go negative with karma. And we have the power to break it. We have the power to change it. But we have to have the fortitude and the knowledge to do so. Don't hand your power over on a silver platter to any spiritual practitioner.
Yeah.
You know, I will get people, oh, just, you know, do what you do and just fix me. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
You know, and I can like remove whatever's on them, but it's no different than, you know, cleaning my house and leaving all the windows and doors open for a week. I'm going to get bats and rats and everything else coming in because I didn't seal things up. I have to own the fact that I cleaned my house and I need to close the windows and doors and allow my space to be clean and my space to be sacred. And the same thing goes to the physical body.
Yeah.
We can break it.
I have been noticing a pattern, and let me know if you've been noticing this too. More clients have been coming to me and saying, just do it. Like, because they're so tired.
They're exhausted.
They're exhausted. And I have a lot of empathy for that. But we can't do that. I can't, I can't cut those cords. It's just bringing your awareness to them, but you still have to do the work. You have to do.
Absolutely. And sometimes I will clear somebody, but I show them how to do it.
Yeah.
And then I have them start to do it, because this is about knowledge and sharing of information. I'm not going to puppy guard what I know because it's not fair to anybody else. I take bits and pieces from everywhere I learn. I'm always working on what's the next thing. How do I help? What's the next level? And sometimes I look back to where I started from, where I had a ghost child in my house that was tormenting us. And I have to laugh, but not really, because that's still a serious problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And there's all these little things, and I learned along the way. And a lot of times my biggest lessons were what didn't work, but I always asked the question, and why? What didn't work and why? What did work and why? When we can quantify the why, it solidifies our knowledge. The answer yes does not do anything.
No. And, you know, I actually, I accredit my journalistic background to why I'm good at working in the spiritual realm, because I am I investigate. I ask the whys, get really nosy, push back. I push back a lot with spirit. Like, well, why should I do that? Why are you telling me to do this? Why? You know, because I want a deeper understanding of it. And I only smiled when you talked about dealing with a spirit child that was tormenting your daughter. I smiled because I had the same exact situation in my house when my daughter was little. And I had tried everything that I knew at that point, and it wasn't working. And I was really frustrated. And I reached out to a friend who was a medium, and I said, I don't know what else. I'm at a loss. Everything I'm doing is just getting worse. And she said, you have an abuse, that child was abused. Show it love.
Mm-hmm.
And when I showed the spirit love, he was gone the next day.
It can be that simple, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a
Because
great,
my mindset was being a mama bear to my child.
right?
All I knew was that this spirit was pinching her and pulling her hair and waking her up all night long and in her ear and, you know, saying bad things
Oh,
to her.
yeah. This one that we dealt with, her name was Annabelle, not related to the horror movie. Um, she started out as friendly, but she didn't know she died. And so she's about an 8-year-old girl, and she's in resonance with my daughter at the time, who was about the same age. She didn't know she died, but she was looking for her mommy, and she saw my daughter's light through the ethers, is the connection, right? And and at the time I couldn't see her, sense her like my daughter could. I can now. I was psychic as a child, but those abilities went dormant based on my parents saying, "Oh, don't be weird." But that's what they knew how to do. But because of my experiences, I knew how to handle a little bit differently. It's not a criticism to my parents whatsoever. And I realized one day that this little girl didn't know she died. And I'm like, well, maybe if she knows she's dead, she can, go back home to heaven, right? Ah, so simple. No, this child got so angry and wanted me to be her mom, wanted my daughter to die. And for months on end, she would stab my daughter in the back 3 times with an etheric knife in the shower. I could be in the shower. I would be like, it was every night for months on end. And she would leave these welt marks in my daughter's back. There's no way my daughter could scratch her in that spot, and they were always uniform. They were always the same size. Now, how did this child get an etheric knife? Well, it's angry energy is what that was. And I didn't know what I didn't know then. I finally was able to cross her over, but she lived with us for 18 months because part of my issue was I didn't know what I didn't know. If I banished her, she could become my neighbor's problem. I wouldn't want that on my neighbors, right? If this was my daughter who had died and was stuck between heaven and earth, I wouldn't want somebody to kick her out so she's wandering the streets lonely. I mean, it was a really tough dilemma, but I learned a lot from that situation. And in every situation we have a learning opportunity. And so now, because of Annabelle, I know how to cross them over. I know how to assist them. And then when that happened, it's like, whoosh, we became a ghost magnet of a house, which wasn't fun either. It took a while to figure this out. There's no handbook on how to raise up a psychic kid, although I have one coming out.
You have a couple books coming out, Laura.
I do. So, but and with parents with psychic kids, how do we know what they're seeing as an imaginary friend or they're making it up? Or how do we know, right? We have to start listening and being in tune as parents because you have got psychic children also. And it's not easy to navigate those waters. When we are pregnant, have those little, what's going on and what are those baby books about, the being pregnant, having a toddler. I forget.
Like what to expect when you're expecting those books.
Yeah. Right. What to expect when your child's psychic. I haven't seen that one around. Have you?
No, I haven't. I had my youngest, she was amazing at astral projecting herself at nighttime, but she would just be active in the house. And I can't tell you how many times I would feel I was sleeping, but obviously I felt her energy and I would wake up and as my oldest daughter called her little glow body, was just like right there staring at me. And sometimes I would wake up and her little glow body would be digging in my purse looking, because she was never allowed to have gum, right? And so she would be looking for those things. And I would wake up and like, go back to bed. What are you doing? And so understanding that reality too.
Yeah. It's hard, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember one of my kids, we had this negative entity in the house and I didn't know how to get rid of it. So she zapped it and she sucked it into a crystal rock. I'm like, what? What?
Did it
Uh,
work?
it did work for a while, but then it broke free.
Yeah.
Then it was really ticked off. But you know, in one of the books that I've got, I'm telling these stories about what happened to me in my battle with the dark side, right? How I went from basically a school teacher to an exorcist.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of these stories, and I hope that people who have psychic kids can find an element they can relate to give them the strength and the stamina and the courage to help their family as best as possible, because it's not easy. And these entities, I don't know if they're becoming more brazen or if the veil is getting thinner or our technology is picking up more, or it's a combination of all the above.
I think it's a combination of all the above, Laura.
I do
All
too.
the, yeah, I don't think there's ever a one answer fits all. And I was given information, oh goodness, about 3 months ago. I just had this download just from my own guides, and they were saying with how much more people are coming into their own light, their own knowing of themselves, right? And it is very much so. When you are first feeling this, you are like an excited child, right? And there is not a big enough understanding of how massively powerful our energy field is as humans. Humans have a very powerful energy field because of our broad width of emotions and our creation abilities. So, the information that came through was people really need to start understanding how to shield it better. And they said so many people, when they think of the word shielding your energy, they bring in the visualization, as you spoke earlier, the visualization of putting, like a soldier would, a shield in front of you, right? Well, those shields covered from your chin down to just below your pelvis, right? Because you want to protect the organs. So they said your shields need to go 5 feet above you
Hmm.
and a foot down into the earth. And
Yep.
when this shield, when I went and I like popped it down into a foot down into the earth, the bottom of the shield, they gave me the image of like a USB cord, right? Like I'm plugging in. And so we're literally through this shield pulling up, and we're being grounded into this energy that is all around us. And this is essentially powering up this huge vibrational shield in front of us. And then these things cannot eat at us because it is more encasing. Because so they said to go 5 feet up, a foot down, and it goes blah, 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 and it, like, it reverberates out to the sides.
You know what? It does, and it works. And I have a slightly different technique, but it's the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The octahedron. So I will often talk about the tetrahedron, four-sided pyramid, 3 walls and a floor.
Mm-hmm.
Stick yourself in it, because again, you got that shield in front of you. Well, what's to stop something from stabbing you in the back?
Yeah.
And I get kind of short-tempered sometimes when I hear people speaking on these subjects, like, oh, just build yourself, an etheric shield in front of you. And I'm like, but I've got 360 spherical da 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 da. And don't stick yourself in a bubble, guys. Bubbles pop so easily.
Mm-hmm.
Stick yourself, just what you said, 5 feet above, foot in the ground. It grounds you, but it also tethers you at the same time. You can use that tetrahedron, stick yourself inside of it. You can stick your home inside of it, your car. You can do all kinds of things with it. Be creative. Again, what you said, Abby, we are creative, so start creating, but
Yeah.
make sure what you're creating is for the greater good.
Yeah. We've been disconnected from the how powerful truly imagination is, and that when we create with our thoughts, that is literal creation. We
I
were
believe
taught
so.
and we were programmed that that's just child play. Oh, they just have an overactive imagination. That's just for drawing doodles on your sheet. No, 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 no. We are so much more capable of that. And that's, again, goes back to that dismissive programming that's always been instilled in us.
Absolutely. I can't agree more wholeheartedly, because we have to really understand our minds are probably our most powerful asset. The heart is good too, don't get me wrong. If we can lead with the heart, the mind can follow, but the mind is so powerful. It can be creative or destructive.
Yeah. And this comes back to the entire reason why we even do this podcast, the burnt wishes, because so often every one of these individuals, men and women, a lot of people think this is just women. There was 45% were men who were tried for witchcraft around the world, are tied to they were just trying to help people.
Yeah.
They were just trying to give them information. They were just trying to. I had one client, and she was persecuted because she had the audacity to want to read, and her home was filled with books.
Mm.
And so they put her in a jail cell and made her watch her entire husband and children burn to death because she had the audacity to want knowledge. So a lot of people try to put all of this, oh, it's demonic and it's evil, this witchcraft. There is shockingly still people that think that the witch trials were accurate and that was a good thing. I myself held a workshop down here in Charleston. I had 3 people reach out to me in private message and say that I should be burnt at the stake. So this is still going on.
Yep. I had a client say, I'm a Christian. I'm not supposed to be talking to people like you.
Exactly.
And called why?
Yeah. So this is the point of this podcast, showing that all of this is just knowledge and tools to help you. We just want to help because we are living in a very real matrix-like spiritual war. And whether you want to believe it is happening or not, it is. And it is a part of our reality.
And the best thing we can do is learn how to build a strong soul, heal traumas, dramas, old wounds, because it strengthens us. And that's the best defense. It's that simple. So thank you.
It's that simple. Laura, I would love for you to tell, because you have 2 books coming out. You guys, I was able to see the front covers of them, and they're absolutely stunning.
I'm so thrilled with them.
They're so beautiful. Can you tell us about these 2? Because I mean, they're coming out pretty close to each other. What are the types? What are the differences between them?
So spiritual war and understanding how the unseen world affects us. So I have a weekly blog, and what I did was I turned that into a year's worth into a book, because the goal is to have people understand how these unseen energies work, how they affect us, what are the unseen entities, what are the angelic realms, the higher realms, what are the reptilians, the grays, what are implants. I mean, the gamut is in that book. It's about 300 pages. And the next one is Battle with the Dark Side, my journey from teacher to exorcist. And the story of how I came to be what I do today. The goal is with this, yes, I share about 10 or 12 stories that happened to us along the way. It was really hard to pick and choose and limit it because it was so crazy. My imagination is not that good. And what I did to help solve those problems, hoping to give people information that they can take their own power back if you're dealing with this. So the first part of that book is it's a bunch of stories and things that happened to us. I talk about Annabelle in quite a detail. I talk about my dad who died. And a couple of kids who got high and one shot each other, and what happened and why. And the lessons about how the dark entities can infiltrate us, especially when we're utilizing illicit substances that shatter our frequency fields. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of really good, positive stories in there too, but also it breaks down like what beings are in what dimension, what are they capable of? Like, what's the purpose of the Hat Man? What do you do with this stuff? And at the end of the day, my editor said something so beautiful to me. And she says, Laura, this book is actually a love story. I'm like, oh, I never thought about it that way. She says, your love for your family, your love for humanity, you didn't, want to harm the neighbors. You didn't want to bind, bury, cast away, whatever it was. She said, this is a love story. And I never thought about it like that. So I was very grateful for her insight on that. So
That's
I'm
just,
excited about that. So thank you.
that's beautiful. And I'm reminded to say just that simple turn of phrase can completely shift how you look at a breath of work and how you look at anything. And it truly is, with all of this, it's just coming up to that heightened different perspective. And if you just shift the lens of which you can look at it, then anything that is traumatic or bad becomes a moment and opportunity for you to learn and grow and help and heal.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Laura. I've been following your work for years. I'm a pleasure to know you in person. You're doing vital, important work. You guys, I don't think everyone understands the amount of work that Laura is doing for the positive on behalf of humanity and on the light side. And I love to consider myself on that battlefield with you, helping as much as I can. But thank you so much. And for all the listeners at home, thank you for tuning in to Burnt Witches. I hope you continue to tune in as we continue to honor and dedicate those before us and those who are still walking on earth with us now. Thank you so much.
And thank you for the same, by the way. I feel the same way about you. It's hard to find somebody who is on that same path with the same amount of integrity and intellect. And I know we're being recorded. I don't want to, but I'm very serious. It's such an honor and a pleasure to know you. And I'm so glad we got to speak in Sedona together.
Yes, yes, that okay. So give you guys a little insight. Sedona was a wild ride because while Laura was contending to the reptilians in Sedona, I had an entire evening where this little gray showed up in my hotel room. He even dressed himself in like a child onesie, trying to convince me that he should come home with me because he can be part of my family. Look how cute I am in my little onesie. I can just be one of your kids. Take me home with you. And because just like Laura, we're able to see the reality of the situations. I not only did I demand that he leave, I actually made him sign a contract. I made him sign on the dotted line that he understands that he is not to follow me home. He is not welcome in my home. He is not welcome around my family, around my children, and that he will be going back up into his ship, which I then did walk outside and watched him go. But it's that extra level of making them sign that contract.
Absolutely. Those extra steps are so critical, and I'm excited to share them with you. And I'm so glad you asked, how do we do this? Because this is the next step for humanity to take our power back. Absolutely.